Paris. Lebanon's absent prime minister arrived in France on Saturday morning after 2 weeks in Saudi Arabia, a mysterious stay that touched off intense speculation that he was being held against his will. The prime minister, Saad Hariri, who has not publicly explained the nature of his stay in Saudi Arabia, met with the French president, Emmanuel Macron, for lunch at the Élysée Palace and confirmed that he would travel to Beirut later in the week. The meeting with Macron came hours after a phone call between Macron and the Lebanese president, Michel Aoun, the French president's office said. Officials said that Aoun had thanked Macron for France's actions in favor of Lebanon and confirmed that Hariri would be in Beirut for Lebanon's Independence Day holiday, which is Wednesday. Hariri later said in statements to the news media that he would announce his position on the crisis in his country after holding talks with Aoun. As you know, I have resigned and we will speak about this matter there, Hariri told reporters, referring to Lebanon, as he was leaving the Élysée Palace, where he met with Macron for over 30 minutes, before gathering for lunch with his wife, their oldest son and Macron's wife. Hariri's office said earlier on Saturday that his wife, Lara, and their son Hussam would be present at the lunch in the Lebanese Prime Minister's honor at the Élysée Palace. Hariri's wife had accompanied him on the flight from Saudi Arabia, and his son was said to have flown in from Britain. Hariri's two younger children, a 16-year-old daughter, Lowe, and a 12-year-old son, Abdulaziz, did not appear in television footage of his arrival. The two have been attending school in Saudi Arabia and could have stayed behind for that reason, but their apparent absence was an obstacle to ending concerns that Hariri was not acting freely. It left room for speculation that the Saudis had pressured Hariri to leave them in the country as leverage. Hariri announced on November 4 from Riyadh, the Saudi capital, that he was stepping down as Lebanon's prime minister, but officials in Lebanon have said that his departure would not take effect until he delivered his resignation in person in Beirut. Hariri's unexpected trip and resignation unsettled the Middle East, setting off a political crisis in Lebanon and even raising fears of war. Saudi Arabia was widely seen as pressuring Hariri to resign as part of its escalating regional feud with Iran and its effort to isolate Hezbollah, the Lebanese Shiite militia and political party that is part of Hariri's coalition government. Hariri said he feared for his safety in Lebanon. With European diplomats scrambling to defuse the crisis, France seized the role of mediator. Macron made a surprise visit to Riyadh on November 9. A week later, the French Foreign Minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, met Hariri in the Saudi capital. France has strong ties to Lebanon, where it was a former colonial ruler, and to the Hariri family. It's an occasion for France to show that it can be an intermediary and have a role in the crises of the Middle East, Rima Tarabai, an advisor on European affairs for